Congratulations, you've completed Unit 1. Do you remember the title of the entire unit? Yes, creatures. So all the stories we read had something to do with animals in some way. I really enjoyed the stories from this past unit. Which one was your favorite? Well, mine was Where the Red Fern Grows, because it reminds me a little bit of my past and it also gives me a glimpse into my husband's childhood. He lived in a rural area, went coon hunting with coon dogs as a boy too, with one of his friends. So I also love Wilson Rawls' writing style, how he had a humble education, yet had such a gift with words. So which one did you like best, and why? Now, today we're starting Unit 2, which is titled, well, look at page 107 in your book if you're not already there. This unit is called Journeys. Now, what is a journey? Well, basically it's a trip, right? Or it's a process of traveling from one place to another. But sometimes the word journey has a figurative meaning. Listen to this sentence. Abraham Lincoln's life was an amazing journey from a log cabin to the White House. Now, in this sentence, is a journey the actual trip from the log cabin to the White House, or is it a figurative journey? Well, in this example, he moved from one position to another in life. He started out as a part of a humble family, but then he became one of the greatest presidents. And his journey was a figurative one because it was a process. It was a series of events that he experienced. So for this unit, we'll read about people who have been through sometimes literal journeys and sometimes figurative. All right, for our vocabulary today, we have the word fascination. We stared in fascination as the artist transformed the white canvas into a beautiful ocean scene. You know, another form of this word is fascinated, like I was fascinated as I watched the fish swimming in concentric circles. Now, wait a minute, we had this word as a word of the day not that long ago. Remember that? So I'm giving you some glimpses of future vocabulary with these fun words. All right, next we have hurdling. The quarterback's strong arm sent the football hurtling halfway down the field. Now, this is a good word. You and I both know well that when a quarterback throws a football, it flies across the field with amazing speed and power. Now, often if we say something is hurtling through the air, we mean it's kind of out of control. Like when I throw a football, it's likely to go hurtling into someone's head. Accidentally, of course. I'm really bad at football. All right, our next word is illumined. Fireflies are illumined by a chemical in their abdomens. Well, I'm sure you know that fireflies are bugs that are able to light up at night. So how are they able to glow? Well, they have a special chemical in their abdomens, and this is what illumines them. So to be illumined is to be lit up or to create light. And then we have the word primitive. Some people believe the first humans were primitive and unintelligent. Well, this sentence gives us a parallel word that helps us discover the meaning of primitive. Unintelligent has the prefix un, and the base word is intelligent. Intelligent means very smart, so unintelligent obviously means not very smart. So a primitive society isn't fully intelligent, or maybe isn't developed. You know, according to evolutionists, before humans became evolved into what we are today, we were like cavemen. Of course, they have no proof of that claim. We know that God created humans with a fully intelligent mind from the very beginning. And then we have sensible. My cousin was sensible and wore a coat to the ball game, but I froze because I didn't think I needed one. I've been there before. Growing up in Minnesota as a teenager, I thought I was fine without a coat, even when the weather was far below freezing. It was not very sensible of me. So, did you see the base word? Something sensible. Someone sensible does something that makes sense. They're wise and careful, and they take care of themselves. Okay? And our last word today is wavered. The flame on the candle wavered when the door opened and air rushed into the room. Now, if you have any experience with candles at all, you know that any air movement makes that candle light flicker a little. So in this context sentence, someone opened the door of the room, and that caused air to move in. And so what do you think it means to waver? Well, something that's wavering is shaking with a quivering type motion, right? So let's get into this story. Now, have you ever wished that you could visit another planet or travel in space? When I was younger, I dreamed of being an astronaut. I really wanted to see the Earth from space one day. Well, now I know I'll only get that privilege from pictures, and I'm all right with that. But maybe astronomy would be something that would interest you. Now, today's story is about space travel, but it's not even close to what would happen in real life. All right, so first, the big idea of the day is a story's setting may be necessary to the plot. So, in other words, the plot of a story sometimes wouldn't make sense if the setting were anywhere else. A good example of this would be if we moved Where the Red Fern Grows to the city. It just wouldn't work. You'd have to change the entire plot of the story. And today's story is a lot like that too. If you tried to change the setting at all, the plot would get all mixed up. The story just wouldn't make sense as it is anymore. So, remember how authors can paint vivid pictures of settings by writing colorful words and phrases? Remember what those are called? Right? Sensory details. We're going to get a little extra insight from our favorite writer today, so listen in for him now.
And now it's time for another insightful, inspiring, and intelligent writing tip from the greatest writer in the world.
What is up, everyone? It's your writing hero, Noah, here to help you become the greatest writer in the world, just like me. Nothing to say about that? I mean, you always contradict me, so I assumed you'd have something to... No, yes you do, Carl. Every single time you contradict. Today I'm going to give you the top 5 things you need to know about sensory details. Now, right now you may be saying, what tales? Don't worry, it's not that complicated, and you are in the hands of a master. You're not gonna call me out on that either. I just called myself a master, Carl. You hate it when I say things like that. Number 5. Sensory details are written specifics that make the settings of stories seem real. Now, this can affect us as the reader in different ways, which brings us to number 4. These sensory details are descriptions that appeal to our senses. Get it? Sensory details, senses. The writer's descriptions should connect to one of our 5 senses: sight, sound, taste, smell, or touch. Number 3, why does the writer use sensory details? So that the reader has a better chance to fully understand what the characters are going through in the story. I actually do a really great job of this in my own writings. Really? Nothing? Oh, I get it. Yeah, I get it. You think you're getting in my head right now, psyching me out? No, sir. It's not gonna happen. You are not gonna psych me out. Moving on to number 2. By using sensory details to help the reader relate, the writer brings the story setting to life. It feeds the reader's imagination so they can totally lose themselves in the writer's world. And the number 1 thing I think you need to know about sensory details is a great example. Listen to this sentence. We ate watermelon for dessert. It's a sentence that conveys a literal piece of information. But listen to this. The sticky red juice ran down our arms as we slurped watermelon that was sweeter than candy. Now that is a sentence full of sensory details. It explains how it feels, looks, sounds, and tastes to eat this watermelon. Does that make sense? Of course it does. I am the greatest writer in the world, after all. I think I could convey a simple idea. Come on, Carl! You know you want to say I'm not the greatest writer in the world. Isn't that right? Say it. You know you want to say I'm not a master. I shouldn't even be... Thank you for watching, everyone. You are now one step closer to being the greatest writer in the world, just like me. Congratulations.
Wow, well, it's so good to know we can bring a setting to life just by using sensory details. Every good story has sensory details, but this one we're reading today is teeming with them. Keep your ear open for words and phrases that appeal to your senses, that make you feel like you're really a part of the story, like you're really there. Okay, and the last thing we'll do before reading the story is touch on the genre. So I have a couple of friends, Nate and Annie, who are always at odds as to whether poetry or prose is better. Nate is all about poetry, but Annie is convinced that prose is much better. So they asked if they could run a show for this class in an attempt to prove once and for all which one is best. And I'm going to have to leave it up to you to make that call. So today we'll hear from Annie about a form of prose called science fiction. And next time, Nate will counter with some type of poetry. It's all really good stuff. I can't wait to find out what you decide. So first, let's hear about science fiction.
All right, Nate, so I know you're all about poetry, but here's the situation on science fiction. Absolutely nothing beats it. What's awesome about this genre of prose is that anything is possible. There's stories that couldn't happen in real life, or at least not in present day, and they're full of imagination. The sky's the limit. Or outer space and time are the limit. Some science fiction involves traveling to space, like in a rocket. Other stories focus on time travel. Where would you want to travel in time? Where would I want to go? All the places I'd want to go ended up as disasters. Like, I want to go visit Pompeii, but not during the eruption of Mount Vesuvius. Not a good idea. Anyway, science fiction also describes what life and technology could be like in the future. So you could have inventions that don't exist yet, like freeze ray guns or invisibility pajamas or whatever you want. So as you can see, anytime I read a science fiction story, I get to go on an epic futuristic journey. One way science fiction writers create their unusual worlds is by using sensory details. They describe different sounds, smells, and sights to make it all feel real for the readers. Like a story where no matter where the characters go, the air smells like blueberries. That's not what our world smells like, unless, of course, you're in a blueberry patch or something. But anyway, those kinds of details help readers escape our world and enter into someplace new and exciting. And in case you were wondering, this genre is related to fantasy, because science fiction is fantastic. Okay, there's more to it than that. One similarity is they both take place in fictional worlds that have unique societies or characters that don't exist in real life. But fantasy focuses on magic and mythical creatures, while science fiction usually uses more spaceships and robots. But listen, Nate, can you imagine if you actually got to go inside a science fiction story? What kind of journey would you want to have? I think I'd rather time travel instead of explore space, because I'm a little nervous about running out of oxygen in space. But at the same time, I'm a little concerned about my time machine getting stuck somewhere, or worse, breaking the time continuum and messing up my life. Then again, what's a good story without a little danger? It definitely makes prose more fun and exciting than poetry. Think I'm wrong? Go ahead. Prove it. I'll wait. In the meantime, I'll be taking a time machine to Shakespeare's day to save his family line. I think some modern-day medicine will help them out. See you when I get back.
Yep, sci-fi certainly is one of my favorite genres. So let's see what kind of fantastical features this story has, shall we? First, let's read pages 109 through 11 to find out why the main character, David, is feeling a bit uncertain. Oh, and make sure you read the italicized paragraph on page 109. It explains what's happened in the book so far before this point. So, what was bothering David? Right, now that he was actually there, he was feeling really nervous about this planet. The high-pitched voice really threw him off first, and then he shared that he was wondering what sort of life form they would meet. So who are the main characters in this selection? Right, the two friends, David and Chuck. And where are they going? They're headed for a planet called Basidium X. And why are they going there? They found this ad in a paper and it was placed by a man named Mr. Bass. And he was asking someone to help the people of his home planet by building a rocket ship and flying to Basidium X. So what does David notice as the rocket begins to land on Basidium X? Right, he sees this green, wavering, misty light. Did you notice the sensory words he used to describe this? They were descriptive enough for my mind to create a vivid mental picture. So why might this selection have the title, The Pale Planet? Well, this chapter is the first one where we can see the planet in our minds. So the title gives us a small hint as to what the planet looks like. So pause and read aloud the paragraph on page 110 that has David's description of the mysterious-looking light. Doesn't that sound so strange? Can you imagine it in your mind? Read again with me as I read aloud, okay? David could not think what had happened to him or where he was. He sat up and rubbed his eyes, and the first thing that struck him was the color of the light. It was green, a real green, wavering, misty. It was like clouded seawater illumined by sun. But if it was light, then it must mean they were near something that was reflecting light. So what do you think David is feeling as he looks out at this planet? Well, I'd imagine he would feel, first of all, amazement at the fact he's actually looking at another planet up close. Maybe he feels excitement at the idea of this great journey. And as we know, there's some nervousness too, right? Or even maybe fear of what they might discover. What were David and Chuck doing before they began to land? They were sleeping, right? And then why does David turn the rocket motor on again? Right, because Mr. Bass's instructions said to slow down the ship by turning on the engine, kind of like making the engine be a brake system. So on page 111, how does David think his voice sounds as they get closer to Basidium X? He noticed it was really strange, right? He said it was like high and delicate and far away, like the tinkle of wind chimes. Notice that simile there? Really helps our ears kind of imagine the sound, doesn't it? So what emotions are David and Chuck feeling as they land? Well, there's obviously some confusion and uncertainty, and they're thrown off by their voice changing. And what is David particularly worried about? Right, he's suddenly just thinking of all the things that they just don't know yet. He realizes that the people of Basidium X may not be like Mr. Bass. He's afraid they won't be able to communicate with them and that they have no idea what these people even look like. It's a little disconcerting. So pause and read aloud the last paragraph on page 111, where David is realizing how daunting this journey could be. Read it with expression, sounding like you think David might have. Well, David sure is having a hard time adjusting, isn't he? And I can understand that. Listen as I read this same passage out loud. I know, David answered quietly. Perhaps it's the atmosphere. But all the same, he had a feeling it wasn't the atmosphere at all. And then, as the small world below them swung up nearer, he had an awful moment of uncertainty. There it is, Chuck. But what if the people aren't people? What if they're... He couldn't even begin to imagine what impossible sort of being they might be. Of course, as Mr. Bass was a Basidiumite, though of a race that had lived long on Earth, surely they would resemble him in some way or other. But what if they're awfully primitive, just the beginnings of a Mr. Bass? What if they only make noises? He finished with a shudder. But Chuck's eyebrows drew together as they always did when he was trying not to be bothered about something. So he's trying not to be bothered by these things, but no matter how hard he tries, these worries just keep cropping up. Do you ever feel like that? Now let's read pages 112 through 13 to find out what David worries about next as they leave the rocket. All right, so as they're getting ready to jump out of the rocket, what is David's new concern? Well, he asked a very sensible question, didn't he? If they jump out of the rocket, how will they manage to get back into it? David does seem to worry quite a bit, but honestly, he is thinking about some pretty important things here. So why does Chuck think that David should just quit worrying? Well, he says that there's no use in worrying because they're already there. He thinks they'll be able to communicate with the people just fine. Everything will work out. Now let's focus on some of the sensory details, the things that help us see, hear, smell, touch, and taste what our main characters are experiencing. Now, what descriptions of the mushrooms appeal to our sense of sight? Read with me at the middle of the last paragraph, starting with, "And there were mushrooms." It says, "And there were mushrooms, hundreds and hundreds of mushrooms wherever you looked. Grayish white and pink and cream they were, every kind you could imagine, some huge and towering with great thick fleshy stems, and some slender, and some small and delicate, myriads of them growing out of the moss." So now let's talk about sensory details again. Which descriptions did you see in these pages that appeal to your sense of smell? They can smell the air is a dampish smell and a cold fungusy smell. So there's two made-up words. So what words appeal to the sense of touch? Well, I saw a couple there. Did you see in that last paragraph? The plants that they were walking on were spongier than moss and wetter. So that's kind of a touch feeling there. And it also appeals to my sense of hearing a little. I can imagine how the ground made a squish sound with each step. And all these sensory details make me feel like I'm actually there, experiencing this new planet right there with them. So how is David's response to Basidium X different from Chuck's response? We've already seen this, haven't we? David is really uncertain, worried, anxious, afraid, but Chuck is confident, calm, and for the most part sensible. So we're learning so much about their characters and their surroundings, but we still haven't met the aliens. And sadly, we'll have to wait until next time. For now, look at pages 45 and 46 from your activity book. So today we're going over setting and sensory details again. So for the first section, write the answers to the questions about the setting and genre of the story. Secondly, underline in this paragraph any words that help you see, hear, feel, taste, or smell the setting in your imagination. And then third, write 2 or 3 sentences of your own that describe your favorite place using sensory detail words. So remember to help your reader for this paragraph feel like they're really there in their imagination. Use lots of words that appeal to our senses of sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. Now, in the first section on the back, write the answers to the questions about David and Chuck's feelings during this chapter, and then explain which one you think that you would be more like. For the second part, number the story events in order. Watch out, these can get tricky. Just remember, before writing any numbers at all, read all 4 sentences carefully, and then think which one happened first. I like to think which one happened last, and then put the middle of events, the 2 in the middle, in order. And once you're done, reread them in the order you chose to make sure that the story makes sense. And last, mark the word that completes each sentence. If you're not sure of one of these words' meanings, then just check it out in the glossary or a dictionary. All of the correct answers are words from today's vocabulary list. So, next time someone in your neighborhood asks you to build a rocket ship and visit another planet, make sure you take him up on it, because this sounds like quite the adventure. So as long as you don't run off into space, I'll see you next time.